The question is that the motion be agreed to. Jackie Dean.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I want to congratulate the member David Seymour for bringing his members' bill to the House and then to the Justice Committee. We had a very short time in which to consider this bill, consider submissions to the bill and then return the bill to the House as we have done today in a more robust form than when we got it. And I want to also join the member in charge of the bill in acknowledging the work of the Justice Select Committee, but not only the members of the committee, the clerks of the committee and Parliamentary Council as well, who did a significant job of editing and rewriting the bill, facilitating the meetings which the committee called and attended, and I believe we have returned a bill which is worthy of the intent in which it was introduced. I want to talk about the process a little, and to acknowledge those submitters who responded to the call to provide the committee with written submissions. And it was gratifying to see that although there was an extremely tight time frame for the hearing of submissions or consideration by the committee, those people that were interested and those people that we wrote to in particular took the time to have their views expressed to the committee. We did consider the views expressed and raised, debated a number of the points that were raised, but I will say that a number of those submissions addressed the harms of alcohol in our society. And that brings me to one of the reasons why a substantial change made to this bill is, while it was introduced as a standalone bill, we are recommending to the House that it be incorporated as an amendment to the Sale and Supply of Alcohol Act. Now, in doing so, incorporating it as an amendment to the Principal Act, it then allows Section 259 to apply. And those sections, or that section and sections of the Sale and Supply of Alcohol Act deal with conditions and the breaching of conditions and the ability to enact penalties. So those submitters, and I thank them, and the committee thanks them, who took the time to submit to us on the harms of alcohol in particular, yes, we considered your objections. Yes, we believe that by making this member's bill an amendment to the Principal Act, then those harms will be addressed. Those harms are also addressed in several other ways. As the member in charge of the bill just mentioned, one of the mechanisms around this bill is that for a licensee who wishes to trade outside of their licence hours, must within 7 days of the Rugby World Cup game supply the District Licensing Committee and the police with a notice. Now, that notice needs to detail the mitigation measures that that licence will undertake whilst they are open for a Rugby World Cup game. It's worth noting that those conditions that the licensee notifies the Police and District Licensing Committee of cannot be more lenient than would other be the case under their normal licence. Also, they must supply the Police District Licensing Committee and have posted on their premises before and during the game those bright line conditions which David Seymour mentioned, which is no dumping of empty bottles, no use of outside courtyard areas and no broadcasting of music for the duration of the game. The provisions of this bill will allow licensed premises who are wishing to trade for Rugby World Cup games expressly for the television or televising of Rugby World Cup games are obliged or enabled to open for an hour before the game. Of course, they are open for the game and they can be open for an hour after the game, but the sale of alcohol must cease half an hour after the last whistle blows. The premises must be empty by an hour after the game has finished. So that brings me to, I've talked about the benefits, which is that a licensee who wishes to trade outside their normal licensing hours under this regime will need to provide a notice to the Police and District Licensing Committee with their conditions. I'm anticipating it will be in the nature of a one-pager. It has to be submitted for each game, but in reality, if a licensee wishes to be open for 10 games, they must notify the police of that, but they can submit the same conditions, place another date on the form. The intention is not to make this a difficult process. So those are the benefits. So let's talk about the penalties, because having attached, if it is the will of the House, this bill into the Sale and Supply of Alcohol Act, Section 259 will apply, and all the penalties contained in the Principal Act will apply. The police will have, and also licensing inspectors will have the ability to close down a premise if transgressions in their licensing conditions happened during a World Cup game during that period. The penalty is, if a transgression is noted by the police or licensing inspectors, then that licensee will no longer be able to avail themselves of the conditions of this amendment. Nor will they be able to be eligible to trade under this legislation if they have had a penalty against them, which would be a variation of their hours within the 12 months preceding the Rugby World Cup. So what this bill intends to do is to fill the gap for the public of New Zealand, which has been left by onerous special licence conditions. And we heard of a number of special licences which imposed onerous conditions so as to make it not worthwhile for licences to contemplate staying open for the Rugby World Cup. And I'm very well aware that some district licensing committees can do things like requiring patrons to buy tickets at the door, requiring patrons to dress up, requiring, as if they were children, requiring patrons or requiring the premises to have a guest speaker. So much so that the conditions have had a dampening effect and a very bureaucratic impact on licences, and they are just finding the whole process too difficult and choosing not to trade. So this bill intends to fill that gap. However, we did hear of an instance along, say, Auckland's Viaduct, for example, where a number of premises are out in the open. They can avail themselves, and any other licensed premise in New Zealand, if they find themselves not fitting into the parameters of these provisions, can then proceed also with a special licence. Mr. Speaker, we do have another opportunity to speak on this bill today. It has been a very truncated process. It is a process which I can say that the Justice and Electoral Select Committee have taken very seriously. Again, I want to thank the committee and everyone else involved in making a good contribution, each and every one of them, to what is going to be the success of this bill. I think we've landed it in a pretty good place. Thank you.